Story 1. Some people just need to be taught better manners. I'm happy to help. This happened last week and I only now have time to type it out. One of my friend, Leah, celebrated her 30th birthday. Due to personal reason, she went all out for it. Venue was amazing, food was great, decor was tasteful, good music and guests were asked to wear something fancy. The day of everything was going well until someone dropped to one knee. You already know where this is going. Someone actually proposed. At someone else's birthday. I was giving the couple the side eye, but I thought maybe this was planned. Maybe Leah knows, because who would be bold enough to do this, without the host's permission? So I went to find Leah. She was sitting at a table, surrounded by a few friends looking a mixture of angry and sad. I asked if she knew this was going to happen. She gave a small head shake and said, "Well, there's nothing for me to do now, right?" I decided then, she doesn't have to do anything. I'll do it for her. I walked up to the happy couple, who at this point was surrounded by a few people who was congratulating them. The audacity. To give credit to some people, a lot of the guests was looking awkward, bewildered and had a face of not interested to be involved in the drama. So not everyone lost their common sense, it seems. Back to the story, I walked up to her, asked to see the ring. She was all smiley, holding out her hand, and I made a show of looking at it closely, then loudly said, "Well, at least the ring is decent." Immediately, smile gone. She looked shocked and asked, "What's that supposed to mean?" Again, loudly I told her, "Girl, you got proposed at someone's celebration, which he didn't plan or pay for. You're not even worth that much. I'm just glad he didn't cheapen out on the ring." Then I turned around, walked to a nearby friend and still in a voice that I want everyone to hear, said how tacky and embarrassing they are. Like a switch, everyone then started whispering at them. Some that I heard includes, "Who does that at someone's birthday? Man can't even plan an event and had to mooch of someone else. If I was her, I wouldn't have said yes." They left quiet fast after that, and while the party did end kind of awkward, Leah did looked better at the end, so I don't feel guilty. As I'm not familiar with the couple I only heard second and third hand story about what has been happening, so not sure about the validity. Apparently she has been complaining how her proposals ruin and she can't even have a second one because she's traumatized by the first one. Thankfully no one is giving her time, instead she's getting even more ridiculed. The next rumor I heard, the couple, have been fighting. The proposal was supposedly her idea and he just went along with it. Now, he's getting called pathetic and cheap. I have no sympathy for someone that stupid. So moral here, people, have some class and learn better manners. Guys, before we get into the comment, take a second now and subscribe to my channel, this will help me a lot. Thanks. Now, to the comments. Update July 24th, 2023. Since I love to read an update to a post, I decided to post this update just to give somewhat of a closure for the story. Not sure if people would even read this since I'm posting on my profile, but in the chance someone comes across the original and decides to check, something I usually do, here it is. Besides, I don't think r/Petty Revenge allows an update. TLDR of original post, a couple decided to propose at my friend's birthday party. I had some choice of words for them. Couple decided to leave the party, and last I heard they were fighting a lot. Today, I met a friend who turns out to be quite close to the boyfriend. From his story, seems like the relationship is over. The guy ended it, but not just because of the proposal disaster. Even after all the fighting and backlash from other people, they were apparently going forward with the wedding. That is when the problem started. The first few thing they decided on was the venue and date. In our culture, the solemnization is usually on the bride's side. So GF decided to host it at her grandparents'. The only problem? She chose the exact same date as her cousin. See a pattern here? Now, to be fair, it's not exactly unusual to have multiple bride and groom at a time. Though usually it would be siblings. In this case, however, the cousin have denied the request. GF didn't back down though. She even suggested they take the morning-evening hour of the day and cousin take over evening night since technically he's already married and this was just a celebration on the groom's side. Why she insist on this specific date? No one knows. Not even the future groom. It was just a random date with no significance to either of them. As you can imagine, this didn't go well and more fighting occurred. It wasn't just between them. This time, families were involved and at the end of it, he ended the relationship. According to friend, the breakup was another drama altogether. Lots of name-calling, shading on social media, trying to bring other people to take side, etc. Latest update, the BF is currently dipping back into the dating scene, but nothing serious yet. The GF is soon to be engaged. Yup. You read that right. Friend told me the most recent interaction between those two was her sending him a message of how she found her perfect man and would be engaged in August. The wedding is supposedly being held early 2024. Why she still messages her ex and why he never blocked her? I have no idea, but I guess to each their own. In my last post, I got comments telling me I caused problems in their relationship, but to be honest with you, after hearing all this I think this was a relationship doomed from the start. I don't think my act of petty revenge contributed to anything. Honestly, I still don't feel remorse for what I did back then, grinning face with big eyes. Guys, what do you think? Is OP is reasonable here? Tell me what you think. Story 2. AITA for telling my niece that her brother will always mean more to me than her and won't help more than what a normal aunt would unlike did for her brother. When I, 43F, was 18 and when my sister, 47, was 22F at the time had my nephew, let's call him Luke, with her then BF, now husband. My sister and her husband didn't have any interest in Luke when he was born, so I took the role of taking care of him. I got my grandmother, she's an angel, to watch him while I was in my last year of high school in exchange for me cleaning and cooking for her on the weekends. My parents weren't much help either. They would give me about $100 a month for Luke, and if you have a kid then you know it's not much. Me and my grandmother were the only ones to take care of him. A year after I graduated from high school, I was kicked out with my nephew because my parents, sister, and her husband didn't want to deal with us anymore. My sister said she wished she never gave birth to him. I immediately went to my grandmother and we went to a family law attorney and I got custody of him and my sister and her husband signed their rights to me. I lived with my grandmother and when I went to community college and my part-time job she watched my son, Luke. It was a lot of work, especially when my grandmother passed away when my son was 6. My grandmother left 90% of her things to me in her will, which caused my parents and sister to reach out to me under false intentions to meet my son and I to reconnect. That didn't last long and I told them they could either act right or never see us again. My dad decided to actually reconnect with my son and I and now we're close, while my mom and I don't really talk much, but she treats Luke nice. When Luke was 8 both me and my sister became pregnant and that's when my sister decided she wanted my son back and started to tell him that me and my husband wouldn't love him anymore once my actual son came along. My husband met my son when he was 5 and we were already together for a year before he met my son. My husband treats Luke like his and we got married when my son was 7 and adopted him when he was 9, with my son's permission. We found out that my sister was saying this when one day he broke down crying asking us not to leave him after we told him that would never happen. He explained what my sister and her husband were saying. Luke knows that he's not my biological son, but he is my son. After that I cut contact with my sister and her husband again and did family therapy and individual therapy for my son. When I had my son, 1 pregnancy, 2 children, I made it clear that our love for him, Luke, didn't change. When my sister reached out about 2 years later, I decided to go low contact with her with the okay with my son and husband. My husband and I live comfortably while my sister and her husband struggle, sometimes financially. My kids did extracurricular activities, got the presents they wanted, and went on one big family trip in the summer. While my sister and her husband couldn't afford much, so when my niece was around 9 my sister started making comments about how I needed to pay for this or that for my niece, but I told her it wasn't my job. I gave my niece the gifts she wanted, took her out from time to time, but nowhere near how I would treat my own kids. Now my son, second, is turning 17 and my husband and I were talking about getting him a cheap starter car. We did the same for Luke when he was 17. My niece is also turning 17 and apparently my sister told her she was going to get a car too. The thing is my sister can't afford to buy her a car so she asked me to, but I told her I wasn't going to buy her a car. That I didn't promise her one and that it's not my job to get her one. My sister then got mad and didn't talk to me for a while. When my son's 17th birthday came around, we surprised him with a car. My niece then called me a couple of days later screaming and crying asking me why I hate her and why I can't treat her the same as her brother. I calmly told her things were different, her brother is my son while she is my niece. I'm her aunt and nothing more, that as an aunt my job was birthday presents, Christmas presents, and showing up when it mattered, that was it. That her brother will always be more to me than she'll ever be. Then my niece started yelling at me again, telling me that I'm being unfair and hung up. My sister then called me to berate me about how I need to do more. I told her if she wouldn't have promised a car to her or my money to my niece, none of this wouldn't have happened. It's been a couple of days and I'm getting calls from some family and some of my sister's friends calling me a bitch and some other things. I do feel bad because my kids did grow up with more and I guess I could have helped more. So AITA for what I said to my niece? Guys, before we go to the comments, if you have a story of your own you can message me so we can talk about it. Don't forget to like my videos. Now to the comments, 2_lead_2_YET. So NTA you adopted their first kid, already way more than a whole lot of people would do. Reasonable, bad 769. Right? Not only that, but as a teenager she literally raised him and sacrificed for him. I repeat, a teenager showed more maturity, responsibility, and compassion than a house full of adults. I mean her sister is one thing, but even the grandparents. Appalling. Story 3. Ignore the time difference in the evening? I'll ignore it in the morning. Not me, but my father-in-law's story. In the 1970s, before email and faxes, my father-in-law, Carl, worked as a trust agent for a bank in the Midwest, which is on Eastern Time, ET. He handled trusts and estates for bank customers, including one older lady. Her son-in-law, Bruton, lived in California, which is on Pacific Time, PT, 3 hours behind Carl, and managed his mother-in-law's estate on her behalf. Bruton used to call Carl with questions, which is not a problem. Except Bruton would call Carl at home at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, expecting him to answer questions. Carl would be at home, eating dinner, or spending time with his family, so Bruton's calls were unwelcome. Carl would explain the time difference and said that Bruton should call before 5 p.m. Eastern Time, not PT. But Bruton always ignored Carl's requests and demanded that Carl call him back first thing in the morning. Carl was nice and would wait until 11 a.m. Eastern Time to give Bruton time to get settled in his own office. Until he decided he'd had enough. The day after Bruton's latest call, Carl went to his office extra early, got the information, and then promptly at 8 a.m., Carl called Bruton's house. A sleepy Bruton answered the phone and croaked, "Hello? Good morning, Bruton." Carl all but hollered into the phone. "What time is it?" Bruton groaned. "It's 8 o'clock, Carl said. "But it's 5 o'clock in the morning here." "Huh, so it is. I guess there's a 3-hour time difference. But you said you wanted these answers first thing in the morning, and it's 8 o'clock here, so I thought I'd give you a call." Bruton never called past 5 p.m. again. Subscribe for daily Reddit stories.